And the question we're going to ask right now is, if we look at what is happening in the digital age, the rollout of technology, the rollout of artificial intelligence, all of that, that is happening at quick time, rapid pace, what is the same demand for dignity and the same demand for credible and quality education look like right now? And how do we ensure that it is inclusive for all at the end of the day? And we're focusing on young people, but I argue that this conversation is even relevant for ourselves as workers in this current economy who too face the risk of also perhaps not having a place in tomorrow's economy if our skill sets and our digital minds are not sharpened and harnessed to meet the today of tomorrow. And so I'm not having this conversation alone. In fact, this is the part where I would also like to invite yourselves to pose your questions, to also share your reflections and your comments. I mean, we are here to celebrate 50 years of 1976. We're here to reflect also on the spirit of giving and helping others selflessly, the spirit of Magogoism. And so in doing so, when the opportunity does arise, please don't hold back and stand up and share your testimonies with us. And tell us, as you look at 50 years of June 16, what does that mean to you right now? As a journalist, what we like to do when many of you get your promotions and you get the top job and the corner office job, we like to ask you, what would you tell your younger self? And many of you, in that time, it's the usual story, that it's going to be okay, that you'll make it through this hardship, that you don't have to be so hard on yourself. And so to the young people in this room right now, I've asked the senior citizens who are not in uniform, because those who are in uniform are not senior citizens today, they're youth. And so you can feel free to comment on this. If we talk about the youth right now and we say 50 years forward, what would you tell yourself? I want you to think about that when we do open up to the floor. I'll pause right now at that point in time. At this point in time, I would like to invite the esteemed guest I'm going to be having a conversation with, someone who has walked down the journey of 1976. In fact, walked through his career thereafter wearing different hats, occupying different positions. Many of you know him better than I. Suffice to say that Father Smanganiso Mkhatshwa, sir, who is also the former executive mayor of the city of Tshwane. May you please join me on stage. Okay, and we are also going to hear from another esteemed voice in South Africa's current, present in South Africa's future, and also in the past. It's an individual who I'm sure would have loved to be with us, but unfortunately because of the location and also time difference, he was unable to join us real time. So I'm talking about Professor Tshilidzi Marwala, a pioneer in most things technology, artificial intelligence. You know, a very vibrant and spirited man, as you will hear. So he sent us this message. As you know, he is based in Japan right now. I think it's around 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. But he did send us this message regarding his reflections on June 16, 50 years, but more importantly on the youth in the digital age. So I'd ask you to turn your Sal, send your eyes to the screen, those of you who don't have it right now. And let's listen into what Prof has to say as he opens the discussion for us.
Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends, it is a pleasure to address you at the annual Number 43 Legacy event. While I regret that I cannot be with you in person, I would like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to join you in this important moment of reflection. This year marks 50 years since 16 June 1976, a milestone that invites us to honor both that profound moment in history and the legacy of Number 43 Trelawney Park. 16 June remains a defining chapter in our collective memory. It stands as a testament to the courage of young people who asserted their dignity, demanded access to education, and claimed the right to shape their own futures. That spirit continues to resonate across generations. Number 43 forms part of this history. It nurtured and supported generations of young people and was embedded in a broader network where ideas were tested, responsibility was learned, and solidarity took root. This legacy event is a valuable opportunity for us to consider how that history is understood today and what it asks of us now. The world continues to change rapidly and in deeply consequential ways. How can young people be empowered not only to navigate these changes, but to actively shape the future they will inherit? The events of June 16 remind us that youth have never been passive observers of history. They have always been agents of change. At the United Nations University, this conviction lies at the heart of our mission. Through research and capacity development carried out with partners around the world, we work to support young people as thinkers and the next generation of leaders, helping to create societies that are more just, inclusive, and forward-looking. I wish you a meaningful and productive legacy event. Ngiyabonga. Ndiyalibonga. Ngiyalibonga. Enkosi. Thank you very much.
Father Mkhatshwa, sir. June 1976. 50 years today. Can you tell us what that means to you as you look at all the events that have also happened as time has passed, sir? And the 50th anniversary.
Well, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'm a preacher, so I trust my voice. I forget that sometimes my voice may not be strong enough to reach out to everybody. Okay. Well, thank you very much, coordinator of the chat this evening. I would call it a chat because in some countries, this kind of exercise is part of their culture. In 1971, I was in Cuba and Nicaragua, particularly Nicaragua, in Cuba as well. The culture of people coming together to discuss issues, to debate issues, to ensure that there is a common approach or understanding when it comes to certain specific issues. So let's get then to the events of 1976. Just for information, I received a phone call on the 16th of June in 1976. I was at home in Soshanguve. And that voice says, Comrade Mangi, Soweto is burning. The police are shooting students. Now, if you know Pretoria, there is quite a difference between in terms of distance. But anyways, then a few comrades ourselves, we got together, we decided to physically drive to Johannesburg in defiance of my banning order, because I was not at that time allowed to leave the magisterial district of Pretoria at all. So for us, especially today, 1976 marks a rupture between what? Oh, good. You want me to do? Yes, a rupture between a certain period where Bantu education was supposed to be the norm. A rupture because, in my opinion, what happened in 1976 was actually the beginning of a subsequent revolution. At that time, without delving into semantics, I'm not so sure whether the students actually understood themselves to be embarking on a revolution, or was it just a rebellion? And there is a distinction between. Or was it simply one of those occasions where they were fed up and they decided enough was enough? That element existed indeed. But I think those students, even in their tender ages, they must have realized that fighting Afrikaans as a language was not probably the most important issue. The most important issue was that, one, Afrikaans was imposed, so it's a very undemocratic process. Secondly, many of them, of the students, would have preferred English as a language of instruction. But then thirdly, there was this feeling that the problem was systemic. It wasn't just a question of Afrikaans and so on. Struggle against Afrikaans was merely a symptom of a much deeper system, which was economically very, very, very divisive. The minority controlled the wealth of the country with all its consequences. The system of education and availability of resources for education were along racial lines. And then in 1977, at that time, I was one of those who started a project called People's Education for People's Power. What we meant was that education, if it's a good one, should empower you. It's not just a question of speaking good English and, and so it's much deeper than that. It's equipping people, especially the young, with skills to be able to create something new in their lives for themselves, but also for society as a whole. To conclude on this one, 1976, especially this year, was not celebrated in isolation. Some of you will remember that the programs that have been driven from the month of May and especially to June and so on, involves also a remembrance or celebration of the Women's March in 1956. Also, the launch of our new democratic constitution. I'm very proud about that one because I was a member of parliament. So I signed that constitution together with my colleagues and so on. Now, what that tells you is that there is a much broader understanding as to what the fundamental issues were. And those issues were systemic. You know how difficult it is to change a system. You can change certain events, certain activities, and so on. But the system influences also your thinking, your lifestyle, and your sense of being and self-pride. So I'll stop for now. It's a long story, but
I'm glad that you did. As you were speaking, I realized that I'm actually having a conversation with a preacher, and a preacher preaches. And so I'd like to apologize in advance, sir. If at any point I jump in there to ask a question, please. Thank you. I want to circle back to what you said about the fight in 1976 being across racial lines. In South Africa, we have seen in the recent past a different kind of student uprising. Perhaps to use the two words that you used, in 1976, the students were embarking on a revolution that perhaps they didn't know. In the recent past, the students were embarking on a rebellion that denied them access to quality education based on monetary lines. And so if we look at the theme of today, we're discussing the youth in the digital future, and we look at this current fight for access. In your view, sir, what does dignity or dignified education in a digital age look like? Is it about access to the desktops and the devices? Is it about access to the data and the fiber and the infrastructure that allows one to connect? For you, what does it look like?
well, education is not static. It changes all the time. Let's take you many centuries back, when the people of Egypt, not the people that inhabit Egypt today, but many, many, many centuries ago, the then Africans invented mathematics, physics, chemistry, architect, all those sort of very sophisticated and very important, if you like, tools for the education of people. And thereafter, the Greek philosophers who actually went to learn from the native Egyptians of that time, all the sort of expertise that those people had come up with and so on. And later on, they spread that to Rome, because Rome, as you know, an empire, was actually dominating many other countries and so on. And they were able then to spread all these sciences and so on that we think are something new. What has happened now is probably more the methodology, the way either of teaching, and even the methodology of research has become much more sophisticated and so on. So what I'm therefore saying is that, and to answer your question, you are talking about a system whereby new players come on board. One of the tools that we're using at the moment is the question of digitization. And also have artificial intelligence. I mean, all these are sort of different tools that have come into play, and we can no longer run our system of education during the Stone Age. And therefore, we must appreciate that. It means ongoing study, ongoing evaluation and appreciation, and so on. Finally, on this one, you remember there was that students' activity, especially university students, called Fees Must Fall. So it was not just a question of fees, meaning money, you know, and so it's true, that also was but they were actually saying even the epistemology, the science of knowledge, of how to produce knowledge and so on, must not only be restricted to what's going on in Europe, United States, because in most of our institutions, they're probably really just taking everything, holus bolus, this must be the right thing to be done, and they just follow that. What the students were actually saying, we would want to make sure that the curriculum and the methods of teaching also take into account the African culture, including language, which is probably one of the, certainly in South Africa, our indigenous languages are very much under threat because everybody seems to think that English is the language of civilization. What's the use of learning Zulu, Swati, sorry, we hear that, but the real thing, if you're smart and so on, go for English, even German, French. And that's why in lots of these former colonies, the language of the colonizer, which means the system of education of the colonizer, continues. Whether it's French, Francophone Africa, Anglophone Africa, Lusophone Africa, sorry, again, you still have to use those terminologies, that's Anglophone, but I'm just trying to convey that education is such an important tool. And coordinate what you are also saying, it's another element that is a challenge to all those whose responsibility is to either to teach or to train people in different forms of education.
So I'm going to take one last question, or ask you one last question for now, because there's a few other elements in this discussion that you'll see. And if we talk about responsibility, then I'd like to ask, sir, from your point of view, if you reflect on your days in government, sir. So you look at the rural communities right now, you look at those on the outskirts. Infrastructure is a big problem. When we talk about digital infrastructure, it becomes a bigger problem. And so let's talk about responsibility then in ensuring that the popular saying nowadays is that no one gets left behind, but those children are able to access this future of tomorrow and this digital age. In your view, how can those who are responsible perhaps be held more accountable to closing that gap and giving those young people a fighting chance?
I think that's a collective effort. First of all, the young people, and some of them remember, they were not even born. We're talking about 1976 and so on. Some of them, probably lots of them here, were not yet even born. So probably have no real appreciation of what transpired. But what is important, though, is to realize that young people themselves need to organize themselves, not just to talk about what happened, what's happening now, what are the challenges that are facing us in today's world. And we've got lots of these lights, and they're exposed to lots of opportunities that their parents, their friends did not even have at all. So they have a responsibility. The parents, and of course in the disadvantaged communities, that will always be a bit of a handicap, in the sense that when the kids go to school, they learn something, they come back home, the parents are not even in a position to help them, to assist them. Whereas in the affluent communities where the parents are either wealthy or if they're told they cannot help the kids themselves, they can hire someone else to teach the children and so on. So there is that struggle that will probably be with us for quite some time. But for me, the most important thing is that young people should take charge to the best of their ability to change their circumstances. Because what is happening today, I mean, it's common cause, everybody knows. I mean, the substance abuse that's spread all over, all the provinces and so on. It's destroying not only the health, the mind, the self-esteem. And something also added that has happened, which is sort of a self-contradiction. Whereas prior to 1994, I'm talking about the South African environment, you had the Black Consciousness movement, for instance, and so on. Those were not young racists. In fact, they were against racism. But there was this culture of being in love with knowledge and understanding the power that knowledge gives them. And they also were guided by this principle of people's education, not a few individuals, but the people. in their various locations, the vicinities where they live and so on. Because by so doing, it means that a society, broadly speaking, the young and the old, men and women, will work together, will share their resources. Some, those who have more money, they will make a financial contribution. But those that have knowledge will share that knowledge. So that's why, therefore, I think a discussion such as this one is really very important, and I think Magogo's project must continue for many years to come, because when it started, it was a family thing, but it's gone beyond that now. And that's why we acknowledge the contribution that the Masilelas are making, and we hope that they will get the support and appreciation that they truly deserve. It's not for themselves, it's for us, it's for this country, it's for South Africa, and I would even say is the responsibility of the AU, if one were to speak in very broad terms, that all these different countries should support one another once again to ensure that we have an education system which empowers, but also an education system which takes into account modern developments, whether in the area of science, whether of research, and so on. But that is absolutely true. And that finally, let us not forget our languages. Ngoki Wationgo, who died a few weeks ago and so on, he was passionate about the philosophy of language, what language really does to human beings and what it means as a tool of communication.
Okay. So you mentioned science, you mentioned education, and of course one of the individuals who've got the responsibility right now to make sure that our science and our technology and our innovation institutions in South Africa specifically, but you mentioned the African Union. I imagine that this individual will also need to be having a conversation with his counterparts in the rest of the continent to ensure that the system is educated and capacitated. Is the Minister of Science and Technology and Innovation of South Africa, Minister Bladen Nzimande. And some of you may know, those of you who don't know, he was recently on a visit to Eswatini, although Elias emphasizes it's Swaziland. In fact, I need to ask you outside of this why. But he was here. And he had a visit to number 43. He shared a few things. He even shared where he was on June 1976. I would ask for your attention once again, just to listen to what he had to say, and maybe we can discuss right after.
We must try and preserve its origin, but it may need to be spruced up, and it really becomes a monument. Will be one of the most important relationships in support of the struggle of the South African. I'm just struck how brave this old woman was. And also, in that sense, like all grandmothers who have love and caring, she's really our grandmother in South Africa as well, who care about especially the grandchildren and children and everybody. It really is it's a very touching and moving. The reason why I'm saying she must have been very brave, because the apartheid government had this habit of crossing the border and actually assassinated our comrades and those who supported them. So she was very brave to be able to do what she did. I'm pleased to be here because I've heard so much about this Kwamagogo. I'm very glad that today I've been able to place my feet here and actually be here and see this very historic place. Thanks to you and others who are at least looking after this. And of course, we thank the children and the grandchildren, for also keeping the house existing and as a monument. We really appreciate that.
No, and we are really grateful that you made the time to come through. And being at that court, I need to thank Minister Masiya.
Yes.
She's a family friend. We grew up together. She understands the story as I understand it.
Oh, wow.
And I will ask Labandwana Labo to make sure that you go away with a copy of the book
Yes.
so that you can
Yes.
engage with the detail.
Yeah, no, siyabonga. Ngangijabulisa kakhulu. I'm a voracious reader about our
Yes, this I know about you. Yes, I know.
I've just done an interview on my own personal experiences on the 16th of June, 1976. I was 18 years old, my first year at university. And we subsequently, that on the 18th, by the way, it was a Friday, we went down the admin building. The university was closed for the rest of the year. So I was being interviewed only yesterday about that. So again, I was reflecting on that history, and now I'm coming to another piece of
Reflection as well.
of our history, which is actually very important.
Yes.
I also had the honor, by the way, to visit. I was in Lusaka not so long ago. I visited OR's house. Yeah, so as I visit, I'm also doing this. It's a trail. You can do it as a liberation trail. Yeah, to be here is great. I was very happy to hear that you are associated with this, but I wasn't surprised. That's like you.
Exactly right, yes.
Yeah,
Thank you, Minister. This tree that you're standing under
yeah.
has been declared as one of the monuments for the liberation of
Okay.
the mango tree. It has a lot of interesting history just on its own.
Wow.
How it harbored the operatives, how it harbored visitors who arrived from Agogo and found everybody had been arrested.
Sure.
City police station, and they used it as a shelter to wake up the following morning and drive back to South Africa. And whilst they were parked under the tree, right in the middle of the night, they had movement in the tree. And then when they looked up, police and soldiers with guards waiting to see who's going to come into the house after they've
Sure.
everybody. So it has a very interesting history of its own.
Yeah.
So when you talk about mango tree in the history of the liberation, this is
Yes.
the mango tree.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And the other thing is the biggest defection in the history of the ANC, which is the defection of Glorious and Demba, actually happened at now.
Is it? Hey.
Hey.
No, ke wonke umzabalazo unabo abathengisi bakhona. Yeah. No, comrade Masilela, asibonge futhi.
Yeah.
Asibonge, comrade.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, thanks for setting aside time when we were told that I'm coming here. I appreciate that. So when ngiphi incwadi ngithenjisiwe? Uma ngingayiphethe la. Yes, siyabonga, siyabonga. Yes, Masilela. It's always that.
Uh,